And now we'll proceed to read the next chapter, chapter 16, which is titled Swami Disappears. Swaminathan's father felt ashamed of himself as he approached the Element Street, the last street of the town, which turned into a rough track for about 100 yards and disappeared into the sands of the Sarayu River. He hesitated for a second at the end of Market Road, which was bright with lights of a couple of late shops and a street gas lamp, before he turned to plunge into the darkness and silence of Element Street. A shaft of greenish light came from a gas lamp, fell athwart Element Street, illuminating only a few yards of the street and leaving the rest in a deep gloom. A couple of municipal lanterns smoldered in their wicks, emphasizing the darkness around. So you must recollect that this is located in a small village somewhere in the heart of South India, and it's in a village. And in that village, we are now talking about the street which leads from the heart of the village to the river which is at the border of the village. So that last street is called Element Street. And these streets had some municipal lighting, which was a public lighting. There was a street lamp, which had which was lighted by gas, and the gas lamp gave a small little bit of light, which fell. A shaft of greenish light from the gas lamp fell athwart Element Street. So the lamplight fell on the street, illuminating only a few yards of the street and leaving the rest of it in deep gloom. And there were a couple of municipal lanterns. They would light wick lamps with kerosene oil in it and a wick, and it will give a flame which would give a small bit of light. So there was one here and one there, and a couple of municipal lanterns smoldering in their wicks, emphasizing the darkness all around. So this little bit of light only made it more emphatic that the place was all dark. Somnathan's father felt ashamed of himself. He was going to cross the street, plod through the sand, and gaze into the Sarayu for the body of his son. His son, Swami, to be looked for in the Sarayu. So there was this Element Street, and this end of the street was leading into the river, and the father has come to look for his son's body. His son, Swami, to be looked for in the Sarayu. It seemed to him a ridiculous thing to do. But what could he do? He dare not return home without some definite news of his son, good or bad. The house had worn a funeral appearance since 9 o'clock. His wife and his old mother were more or less dazed and demented. She, his wife, had remained cheerful till the taluk office gong struck 10, when, her face turning white, she had asked him to go and find out from Swaminathan's friends and teachers what had happened to him. He did not know where Swaminathan's headmaster lived. He had gone to the board school and asked the watchman, who misdirected him and made him wander over half the town without purpose. He could not find Mani's house. He had gone to Rajam's house, but the house was dark. Everybody had gone to bed, and he felt that it would be absurd to wake up the household of a stranger to ask if they had seen his son. From what he could get out of the servants sleeping in the veranda, he understood that Somnathan had not been seen in Rajam's house that evening. He had then vaguely wandered in the street. He was doing it to please his wife and mother. He had not shared in the least his wife's nervousness. He had felt all along that the boy must have gone out somewhere and would return. and then he would treat him with some firmness and nip this tendency in the bud. Nip it in the bud means to stop it at the very beginning. He had spent nearly an hour thus and gone home. Even his mother had left her bed and was hobbling agitatedly about the house, praying to the god of the Tirupati hills and promising him rich offerings if he should restore Swaminathan to her safe and sound. His wife stood like a stone image, looking down the street. The only tranquil being in the house was the youngest member of the family, whose soft breathings came from the cradle, defying the gloom and heaviness in the house. When Swaminathan's father gave his wife the news, or no news, that he had gathered from his wanderings, he had assumed a heavy, aggressive cheerfulness. It had lasted for a while, but gradually the anxiety and the nervousness of the two women infected him. He had begun to feel that something must have happened to his son, a kidnapping or an accident. He was trying to reason out these fears when his wife asked in a trembling voice, "Did you search in the hospital?" and broke into a hysterical cry. He received this question with apparent disdain, while his mind was conjuring up a vision of his son lying in a pulp in the hospital. He was struggling to erase this picture from his mind when his mother made matters worse with the question, tell me, where could the boy have gone? Were you severe with him for anything this morning?" He was indignant at this question. Everybody seemed to be holding him responsible for Swaminathan's. The boy is missing, and they are all blaming the father for it, for Swaminathan's disappearance. Hmm. Since 9 o'clock, he had been enduring the sly references and the suspicious glances. But this upset him, and he sharply asked his mother to return to her bed and not to let her brain concoct silly questions. He had, after that, reviewed his behavior with his son since the morning and discovered with surprise and relief that he had not seen him the whole day. The boy had risen from bed, studied, and gone to school, while he had shut himself up in his room with his clients. He then wondered if he had done anything in the past 2 or 3 days. He was not certain of his memory, but he felt that his conduct was blameless. As far as he could remember, there had not been any word or act of his that could have embittered the boy and made him do wild things. It was nearing 12 when he found his wife still sobbing. He tried to console her and rose to go out, saying, again with a certain loud cheerfulness, "I am going out to look for him. If he comes before I return, for heaven's sake, don't let him know what I am out for. I don't care to appear a fool in his eyes." He had walked rather briskly up to Hospital Road, but had turned back after staring at the tall iron gates of the hospital. He told himself that it was unnecessary to enter the hospital, but in fact knew that he lacked the courage. That very window in which a soft, dim light appeared might have behind it the cot containing Somnath all pulped and bandaged. He briskly moved out of the hospital road and wandered about rather aimlessly through a few dark lanes around the place. With each hour, his heart became heavier. He had slunk past Market Road and now entered Ellerman Street. He swiftly passed through Ellerman Street and crossed the rough footpath leading to the river. His pace slackened as he approached the river. He tried to convince himself that he was about to do a piece of work which was a farce. But if the body of his son, sodden and bloated, should be seen stuck up among the reeds and rocking gently on the ripples, He shut his eyes and prayed, "Oh God, help me." He looked far up and down the river, which was gliding along with gentle music. The massive peepal trees overhanging the river sighed to the right, sighed to the night. He started violently at the sight of the flimsy shadow of some branch on the water, and again at some float kept tilting against the moss covered parapet with muffled thuds. At every noise and shadow, he was getting very shocked and frightened. And then, still calling himself a fool, he went to the Malgudi railway station and walked a mile or so along the railway line, keenly examining the iron rail and sleepers. The ceaseless hum and the shrill whistle of night insects, the whirring of bats, and the croaking of frogs came through the awful loneliness of the night. He, this is exactly a village scene where the hum and shrill whistle of the insects. Uh, Here we have that insect, what is it called? The cicada, which rubs its wings with its legs and creates a screeching noise. Similarly, in every place, there are insects of the night which just go on making noise. The croaking of frogs and the whirring of bats. These are the sounds in a village. He once stopped with a shudder to put his finger on some wet patch on the rails. As he held up the finger and examined it in the starlight and found that it was only water and not blood, he heaved a sigh of relief and thanked God. That's the end of chapter 16. Now we'll do chapter 17 on the next time. So thank you and bye bye.